Hello, my name is Javier Hoggard with Patriot Pros. I'm a service expert, and today I want to show you a few things you can expect from us when we come to service your air conditioning system. This is something that should be done once a year to ensure the system is running at the most efficient it can, along with maintaining the warranties of the system. Now, one of the things you will see is a 28-point inspection form that we're going to be going through with you just to knock off everything. Now, this is important because there's three portions to your air conditioning system. Here's your thermostat. This is going to allow the system to turn on and off properly. You have your furnace and a coil downstairs. That's what's delivering all the air throughout the home, along with outside, which is per se the engine of the air conditioner. That system itself, we'll go through everything together, but to start, this is going to be our first step. One of the things we check with this, very simply, we pull off the thermostat off the wall here, and we check to make sure that the wires are not loose. Time and time again, we'll come to a customer's house where it's just a simple loose wire or a dirty air filter. These are very simple things that can be adjusted and really is what we hope for. Now, in this case scenario, everything's looking nice and tight and we're all good there. The only other thing we'll end up checking up here is the actual temperature. Another common thing we run into is that the thermostat temperature will not be quite the same as what the temperature actually is throughout the house. And a common example is, well, you set it to 71 and it may feel more like 80 degrees. When a thermostat begins to fail, the thermometer inside here just doesn't work as well. So we'll end up checking that with a device known as a temperature probe to actually make sure that's working properly. This is our first step, and now we can move downstairs to our second step, which is the furnace. With the inside furnace, there's really not too much you need to do as a homeowner. One of the most important things though with a furnace or air conditioner is airflow. Now, airflow is something such as your furnace filter. There's definitely a lot of people that don't even realize they have them. Furnace filters are going to be located in two places, either right next to the furnace, which in his case scenario, he has what's called a filter box, which has a little tiny filter door right next to it. Our second place will be located in, you'll typically see this as if your furnace is located in the attic, you'll have a filter grate inside the ceiling. Now, the most important thing that you do want to make sure of is that your furnace is off before you end up changing the furnace filter. Just with all the airflow passing by, the last thing you want to do is possibly drop something in there and it gets sucked into the furnace. Now, to show you here, it is a fairly simple thing. With the furnace filter door here, pop it down. We're going to grab our furnace filter. And one thing that's very important is you want to make sure with any filter that you're able to see light through it. Now with this one, of course you can see it's fairly black. It's definitely time to change this one out. And all we're going to do is take our new fresh furnace filter, and with furnace filters, definitely try to stay towards the cheaper filters. Just the very expensive ones can actually act kind of like a restricted filter. The most important thing, and I don't know if you guys are able to see this, but there is an arrow located right here indicating the flow of the airflow. Most furnaces will have an indication of which way the airflow is going, which is typically towards the furnace. So all we're going to do here, now that the arrow is facing up, we're going to slide it back into place. We just simply will close the door and shut the lever. So the second thing on our checklist is we'll actually come down here to the furnace and we'll remove this door and begin to check in a lot of ways the brains of the system, which is your control board, along with the main thing that's going to be pushing the air throughout the home, which is your blower motor. And obviously, being a homeowner, these things can get a little dangerous. Please do not try this at home. But when we look at the system itself, some of the things that we commonly see is dust buildup inside the blower cabinet. So very simply, one of the things we end up doing is grabbing some wet wipes and wiping everything down. So one of the next things we'll end up doing is actually doing the inspection of the system after we get done cleaning. This will allow us to kind of check what the actual vitals of the system are doing. One of the first things we end up doing is amperage. Think of amperage of how hard is the system working. This is gonna give us a good reading on how hard this system is working and how well it's been maintained over the years. So to start, we'll check amperage. And once we check that that's all good, we'll move to voltage, making sure that we're getting the proper voltage to everything throughout the system, and make sure that power is going to your outside air conditioner, which is perfect. So now that we're done inside, cleaning everything along with inspecting the vitals of the system, we're gonna go ahead and put back on this panel and then move outside to the air condenser, which is again the main engine to the system. Now, to start out here, there's a few basic things that you can do, and obviously this is where you're gonna need that garden hose. Throughout these fins, over time, typically once a year, you'll start to develop cottonwood and just general dust. What you're gonna need to do is just very gently spray off the system, and this is gonna help the system breathe. For the AC's sake, we wanna make sure it's nice and clear so it can breathe properly. This will also help the efficiency rating for the system. Now, otherwise, for the outside system, one thing you guys might be able to see with this AC in particularly, it's not quite level. You know, you have a liquid inside of it called refrigerant. The refrigerant highly depends on everything being level. Otherwise, your compressor, you know, the engine like I was talking about, won't work the best for you. And this is something that typically a service professional is gonna wanna do because, you know, if you are leveling the system, there's a risk on bending the lines. If you guys feel confident, very simply just grabbing a level, picking up the system a little bit to make sure it's perfectly square. There's a few things that we as professionals need to check to make sure the system is gonna be running well. For one, we're gonna take off this panel. This actually holds all the wiring and all the nitty-gritty parts of the air conditioner. This is how we're gonna be able to check the fan, the compressor, and really the state of the condenser itself. And lastly, one thing we'll end up checking, which is probably the most important portion of the air conditioner, is the refrigerant levels. We'll hook up this gauge here in order to inspect everything. A few different bullet points that are on our inspection sheet, which is the capacitor, contactor, along with the wires going to the actual compressor and fan. One of the most important things, like inside, is amperage to see exactly how everything's doing. So that's looking good. And now, our fan. Perfect. So that's looking good. And last but not least, one of the things we'll end up checking is the capacitor. And think of your capacitor kind of like the supercharger to an engine. It's what gets the motors up and running. So that's looking good. 240, exactly what we want to see. So now moving to refrigerant, we want to make sure, you know, similar to the air in your tire, we want to make sure that we have the proper levels inside the system. Okay, so with our gauge, we can see with the system off that our refrigerants are looking pretty accurate here. Now I'm going to go ahead and put back on this panel and we'll continue on inside. Something that's recommended by the manufacturer is to get the system serviced once a year. This is going to ensure that the system's running properly. One of the things that we'll do at Patriot Pros as service experts is check the amperage, voltage, refrigerant levels to make sure that the internal components are working properly and to manufacturer's specifications. At any point you have any questions, or of course you're looking to get your service done, feel free to call us at 303-814-1297.